Hey there, Jordan Sheridan live, Monday, October 3rd, the year 2022. Hope everybody had a good weekend, staying safe and healthy in these tough times. Uh, quite a lot of things to discuss today. We'll wait for more people to trickle in to the stream. I'm a little bit late because I am trying to write all day while doing my normal job. So smash that like button, share this live stream. We got quite a few topics to get to. We're also going to do a call in, so you could call in live into the YouTube show today. So we'll do that in a little bit. But please do your kindness and smash the like button and share this live stream. The more people that press like, the more people that press share, the more people that will see. Also comment if you can on the video. So the more people that comment will help. So quite a lot going on. I thought, I'm not going to pretend to understand the Brazilian election. So maybe I'll get somebody later in the week to talk about that. If you missed, I did an interview earlier in the day that was posted to the channel. Ron DeSantis and Florida leaders in Lee County, which is the Fort Myers area, they delayed evacuation orders by at least a day or two, which now seems to be a major reason. At least 55 people have died in the Fort Myers area. So definitely check out my interview with Thomas Kennedy, who's an activist in Florida, about that. Today, we are going to, I don't know how you avoid it at this point. I'm not really into doing Trump 24/7, but between Trump and Marjorie Taylor Greene and, talking about McConnell has a death wish and Marjorie Taylor Greene warning that Democrats are killing Republicans and the killings have already begun. I really think this stoking of political violence is going to start leading to serious violence, unfortunately. So we're going to get into that. Then, interesting story in the Hill about basically the successor to Bernie Sanders in the progressive movement, who will be the future of the progressive movement, kind of pick up the mantle from Bernie. The choices they gave, I'm not in love with, so we'll get into that. And Amazon labor union, Amazon workers trying to organize, now will have their second union election coming up in Albany on October 12th. Wait till you hear Amazon's latest union busting. It is so absurd. It is so insane. I don't really have words. So we'll get into that. And then again, we'll do a live call-in where we could talk about these things and anything else that floats your boat. So again, smash that like button, share this live stream so we can get this out to more people. So let's start with Trump. Again, I'm not one to get into the habit of following Trump's tweets or whatever these are called, his truths, since it's on Truth Social. But I really think when you add this to the other stuff that's being said by Republicans, it's really a sign of what might be to come. I think you can't be quiet when people are stoking political violence, because throughout history, when, individuals or groups started just kind of normalizing violent political rhetoric, violent political actions soon follow. This is Trump over the weekend. It's not The Onion. If you haven't seen it, Donald Trump posted on Truth Social, if you have it, Colin. I guess he's mad at Mitch McConnell. Is McConnell approving all of these trillions of dollars worth of Democrat-sponsored bills without even the slightest bit of negotiation because he hates Donald J. Trump and he knows I am strongly opposed to them? Or is he doing it because he believes in the fake and highly destructive Green New Deal and he is willing to take the country down with him? In any event, either reason is unacceptable. He has a death wish, all capital. Let me repeat. He has a death wish, all caps, must immediately seek help and advice from his China-loving wife, Coco Chow. I'm just going to leave that up so you could look at it if you haven't seen it. First of all, Mitch McConnell is a disgusting, vile cretin. He has done more to block progress, actually sabotage any type of progress than any Republican I can think of in the last 20, 30 years. So it pains me to have to defend. I don't want to say defend, but actually discuss Mitch McConnell in a somehow sympathetic light. Actually, put it back up, Colin. I want to go through it. So, first of all, I don't know what he's talking about in terms of Mitch McConnell approving all these trillions of dollars. I don't know what he's talking about. McConnell, as far as I know, is against the Inflation Reduction Act, which honestly, the Inflation Reduction Act was basically written for Wall Street and special interests. It's not really going to lower inflation. It was a giveaway to the fossil fuel industry in many ways. That's why ExxonMobil was putting out statements in favor of it. McConnell wasn't for it, so I don't really know what he's talking about, that McConnell is approving all of these trillions of dollars worth of Democrat-sponsored bills. I mean, Trump, when he was president, spent trillions of dollars on tax cuts for wealthy people. So he seemed fine with that. McConnell was fine with that. And honestly, McConnell, when Trump was president, really pushed through all of Trump's regressive stuff, deregulation, tax cuts for the wealthy, etc. So on the merits, I don't really know what Trump is upset about in terms of policy. But put aside the policy, obviously, when he writes, he has a death wish, all caps. He's doing this intentionally. He is stoking to his base, which includes white militia members, which includes QAnon members, which includes Proud Boys, which includes Oath Keepers. Apologies if I'm forgetting any white supremacist or violent conspiracy groups. I mean, it's not even like subtle at this point. He is explicitly suggesting violence against Mitch McConnell. And I'm not for Mitch McConnell. And I would love bad things to happen to him politically. But whether you're progressive, conservative, neoliberal, it doesn't matter. We cannot cross the line and the threshold into normalizing political violence against those we disagree with. Here, Trump is very clearly tossing it out there for his base, which includes people, by the way, who shot up the FBI office in Cincinnati, which includes people who are threatening both politicians, FBI offices, the Department of Justice, all over the internet. I mean, it's not a dog whistle; it's just a siren, and people are going to follow Trump's lead. I mean, we have seen people, for example, kind of go up to Ted Cruz and McConnell at restaurants and give them a piece of their mind. I'm all for that. They're public servants, and please. Public servants should be made uncomfortable when they don't represent the public. There's a difference between confronting them with your words and now sending out the bat signal. He's got a death wish. Wink, wink. But then the vile, like Mitch McConnell's wife is Asian, who happened to serve as Trump's transportation secretary, calling her Coco Chow. I mean, it's not surprising. Obviously, he called Elizabeth Warren Pocahontas. I mean, Elizabeth Warren kind of brought that on with her stupidity. But I mean, this is just beyond, like, I never really covered Trump's like naughty language because you have enough people in the media doing that. But when his language is very clearly shifting to like, let's fuck up some people. Excuse my French. He's got a death wish. I mean, people are going to follow. And make no mistake, if an attempt is made on Mitch McConnell, and I'm not advocating for that, clearly, regardless of how deplorable of a human being he is, you can look back to messages like this from Donald Trump because his supporters, not all of them, but a lot of them, view him as their fearless leader, view him as fighting the deep state, as fighting against the establishment, even though Trump is the establishment and basically operated as your card-carrying Chamber of Commerce Republican president. I don't know. It's pretty fucked up. And I think one of Trump's legacies will be that he made the abnormal normal. And the fact that he's putting this stuff out and it's kind of just people just go on and move on. I mean, Tina could tell you, Tina Desiree Berg, who co-hosts here with Ron Placone on Thursdays and does her own show here on Thursdays, Right Wing Insanity Report. Tina is immersed in all of these chat rooms, all of this online space with these violent groups, with white supremacist groups. They eat this shit up. And many of them look at this as Trump is telling us to do something. But Marjorie Taylor Greene did not want to be out-Trumped. Marjorie Taylor Greene did not want to be out-Trumped. She was at a Trump event, Trump rally in Michigan. And apparently, she also just said, to hell with the subtleties. Let's take a listen to Marjorie Taylor Greene warning that the Democrats are coming to kill you.
We're all targets now, though, for daring to push back against the regime, and it doesn't stop at a weaponized legal system. I'm not going to mince words with you all. Democrats want Republicans dead, and they've already started the killings. An 18-year-old boy was run down by a Democrat driver who confessed to killing the teenager simply because he was a Republican. Even right here in Michigan, just last week, an 83-year-old woman was shot in the back for advocating for the unborn. Yep. Joe Biden has declared every freedom-loving American an enemy of the state. But under Republicans, we will take back our country from the communists who have stolen it and want us to disappear. We will expose the unelected bureaucrats, the real enemies within, who have abused their power and declared political warfare on the greatest president this country has ever had.
Whew. First of all, we'll get to the killings. Do these people understand what communism is? Does Marjorie Taylor Greene understand what communism is? Joe Biden is a communist? I wish. Joe Biden is kind of a Republican from the 1990s. That's who Joe Biden is. He's basically like somewhere in between Bob Dole and, I don't know, Bob Dole and Newt Gingrich in the 1990s. He's not a communist. I wish he was a socialist. I wish Biden wasn't a corrupt puppet owned by Wall Street and big pharma and big real estate and Silicon Valley and the military-industrial complex. I wish, but, he's not a communist, unfortunately. But let's get to the two examples she showed. This is from the Washington Post. If you could pull that up, Colin. The Washington Post story. Go down to the part that says she gave two purported examples. So this is from the Washington Post in response to Marjorie Taylor Greene's Dems are coming to kill you. She gave two purported examples. One was the young man run over and killed in North Dakota by, as she framed it, a Democrat driver who confessed to killing the teenager simply because he was a Republican. The other was a woman in Michigan who was shot while, quote, advocating for the unborn. If we quickly work backward, we see how poorly predicated all of this is. In a speech last month, Biden decried the views of Trump's most fervent supporters, the ones who reject election results or play down threats posed by rioters at the Capitol on January 6th, people like Greene, in other words. But since it's perpetually useful for members of the right's political and media leadership to cast criticisms on a subset of the group, As a criticism of the whole group, Biden's comments became an attack on every freedom-loving American. That idea that these, quote, enemies of the state, meanwhile, is pinned to the two acts of violence Greene cites as an appeal to anecdotes that should send up warning flags for any observer, particularly when considering the actual cases. The North Dakota incident has been a point of focus on the right for a week or two, given the intoxicated driver's assertion that the teenager was, quote, a Republican extremist. Police and witnesses say there was no political argument prior to the incident. The shooting in Michigan, meanwhile, was disputed. The shooter claims it was an accident. More to the point, though, voting records show only one person matching the shooter's name and age in the county where it occurred. That person has consistently voted in Republican primaries since at least 2014. Michigan doesn't have a registration by party. Then there's the detail that the victim wasn't actually killed. This isn't much to hang a Democrats want to kill us message on, though. Again, Greene has gone further with less, but what she's doing is tapping into and amplifying the evolving sense of victimization on the right, one that's regularly stoked with the right-wing universe. I mean, again, putting aside the kind of absurdity that Democrats want to kill Republicans, first of all, the Democratic Party and Democratic politicians are too spineless to do anything of the sorts. They're corrupt Democrats, and they're also spineless. So this, horror movie that she's putting out there, that Democrats are coming with their axes for your pro-life sisters or something, is absurd. But secondly, again, this is going to lead to violence. I mean, I have been to probably between 50 and 60 Trump rallies from 2016 and 2020. I covered them on the ground in Pennsylvania and Michigan, Ohio, Wisconsin, Georgia. I've been to a lot of Trump events. I've been to kind of MAGA events like parades and flag drops. There's already kind of a fervor, shall I say. In some of these events, it's almost like a pack of hyenas, frankly, mostly white, a lot of white dudes, frankly. And they kind of seem ready to pounce, and they feed off of the things that Trump says. They feed off the things Marjorie Taylor Greene say. In many cases, they are subconsciously racist or out and open, proudly racist. But when you're Trump putting out death wish and Marjorie Taylor Greene that Dems are coming to kill you, you have a lot of unstable people within this base. Not all of them. I mean, I've interviewed plenty of Republicans and Trump supporters who are good people. They just like Trump. They are hoodwinked by some of Trump's populism. They're not violent people. But there's also quite a lot of violence in the Trump base. I give you January 6th. Contrary to what some leftists have said and tried to minimize it, it was just some protest that got out of hand. That was a violent, many of whom were armed, attempt to violently overturn election results. Many of them were chanting, "Let's hang Mike Pence." So we already know violence exists within this base. And Trump and Marjorie Taylor Greene are taking that and basically pouring gasoline on it. I want to show Rick Scott, another corrupt Republican, also was guilty of the largest insurance fraud in American history down in Florida. He defrauded Medicare. So naturally, he then became the governor of Florida and now is a U.S. senator. But just look at Rick Scott twist himself into a human pretzel to try and avoid criticizing Trump or Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Over this weekend, we heard some pretty disturbing rhetoric from the former president who tweeted that Senator McConnell has a death wish. He said some racist things about his wife, the former cabinet secretary, Elaine Chao. Last night at his rally, Georgia Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene made a false claim that Democrats want Republicans dead, and they have, quote, already started the killings. Given the level of security threat right now, would you rebuke those comments?
Well, I think what we got to do is we got to bring everybody together. I would also say that what Vice President Harris said yesterday, that or day before yesterday, that if you have a different skin color, you're going to get relief faster.
That's not what the Vice President said.
So I think what we've got to do.
That's not what the Vice President said. She talked about equity and the problem within FEMA. But I'm specifically asking you about Marjorie Taylor Greene and President Trump.
Wait, Margaret, let's make sure. FEMA has to be colorblind. FEMA has to provide support to everybody. Now, here's what I'll tell you. I believe that we've got to do. President Trump has talked about this unbelievable spending that's causing inflation hurting the poorest families. I grew up in a poor family. I watched inflation hurt my mom. We've got to watch how we spend this money.
I know, sir. You're talking about substance, and I would love to talk to you about that. But what I quoted you was a phrase saying McConnell has a death wish. He said racist things about Elaine Chao. And then they have already started the killings. I mean, that's not a policy dispute, Senator. The language is what I'm talking about. Isn't that dangerous?
I think we all have to figure out how do we start bringing people together and have a common goal to give every American the opportunity to get a great job, their kids to have an education they believe they can be anything, and make sure everybody lives in a safe community. That's what I do every day, and I've tried to bring people together to do that.
Colin, come on for a second. Am I in the Twilight Zone? I mean, you're in Texas. I'm sure you've met some people that might be on the line of maybe a little unhinged. Aren't these folks just kind of like tossing out the subtleties and saying, go fuck up your the enemy?
100%. Like before, it was like the people who follow Trump and stuff, they'd be like, oh, that's coded language. I know what he wants, or like that's what was understood. And now it's like they're not even bothering with that coded language there anymore. They're like, here's the targets. Let's step back and see what happens.
It's really crazy. And honestly, I mean, we could talk about Democratic Party corruption till we're blue in the face, and I certainly do. And it's probably going to bring it up in the next topic. Democrats are not your friends either. We live in the United Corporations of America. You got one party that's basically, wants to offer you crumbs and frame the crumbs that they're constantly offering you as historic achievements. And you got another party now that's saying, hey, get your gun. The killings are here. That's a pretty dreary situation for the working class, especially when you have a lot of people in despair. You have an economy that is not historic. You have an economy that is built on, a house of cards. You have an economy that has basically rent is up 20 to 30% in a lot of cities. Food prices obviously are up. Housing prices are up. Electricity is up. Gas. You have a lot of people that are working multiple jobs. You have a lot of people that feel socially isolated. So when you already have, even though the media and the Democratic Party try to spin you and frame, oh, the economy is doing better. COVID is over. It's not over. Look on Twitter. Schools are already short-staffed because all their teachers are out with COVID. But you won't hear about that in the media. COVID is over. You have the conditions already there for unhinged people to be listening to Trump and Marjorie Taylor Greene and fucking spineless, corrupt assholes like Rick Scott and say, oh, maybe it's time. Maybe it's time to increase the temperature, go a little more aggressive. I hope I'm wrong. But I do think sooner than later, we're going to be coming live to report on political violence mass shootings that are politically based, shootings that might break out at political events, rallies. Hopefully not, but, election day. We know Ron DeSantis has his election police out there. This happens in places like Mexico and other countries where you have violence at political polling places. I'm not trying to over dramatize things or fearmonger, but I've been out on the road enough to kind of meet enough people and kind of read the room and kind of feel a little bit about the pulse of the country and where things stand. And in 8 years of doing this on the ground, I have not seen such normalization of political violence. When Trump at his rally in 2016 was like, punch him in the face, I'll pay your legal bills. That was like the first inkling of him saying that, but there wasn't really follow up among the Republican Party. And Trump didn't really continue on urging his people to be violent. Now it's kind of happening in pretty recurring themes. So we'll see what happens. We could talk about that. As a reminder to people who came in late, we're going to be doing a call-in in probably 15, 20 minutes. So we'll go live on the call-in app while we're live on YouTube. So you could call in live to the show on call-in, and it will come through on the YouTube show too. So we'll talk about Trump and a lot of other things. I don't want to do a monologue, so make sure you download the call-in app and call in. I always love doing the call-in show and being able to take your calls on YouTube. Moving on, and smash that like button. We got almost 300 people watching, but only 155 of you have pressed the like button. So I need over 100 more. Please press that like button. Super chats are welcome. Please. We need your financial support. I want to read. This is from The Hill. They did kind of a story quoting a bunch of people kind of on progressives hunting for a new, younger leader in the post-Bernie Warren era. I don't really like to group Elizabeth Warren with Bernie Sanders because I don't think Elizabeth Warren is actually progressive. I think she, honestly, if she would have made some decisions that were a little less selfish, we might be talking about a President Bernie right now. I think she should have dropped out of the presidential primary after she got her ass kicked in New Hampshire. Her staying in took votes away from Bernie in Nevada, South Carolina, but most importantly on Super Tuesday, because a lot of states in Super Tuesday had done early voting when she was still on the ballot because she wouldn't drop out. But I digress. I'm not going to read this whole Hill story, but it does have a couple names.
Everyone loves the cloud experience. Reality is about 70%
that I'm not so fond of. If you go down to the story, hold on. All right. Enter another possibility. Pete Buttigieg. This Hill story. Enter another possibility. Pete Buttigieg, who voters took by surprise in Iowa. Hold on. I lost it. Enter another possibility. Pete Buttigieg, who took voters by surprise in Iowa and New Hampshire, where he came in first and second place, respectively. Biden, his former rival, ultimately selected the 40-year-old to be transportation secretary, allowing him to travel around the country promoting the infrastructure bill ahead of the midterms. But there's one problem that many progressives are eager to point out with Mayor Pete. They don't claim him as their own, or he's just a corrupt McKinsey consultant who gentrified the hell out of South Bend, Indiana, bulldozed 1,000 homes in 1,000 days in the black and brown part of South Bend, Indiana, is more of a marketing creature that was kind of created out of a neoliberal lab somewhere, has no actual genuine principles on anything, and would make a terrible president. Many sympathetic to the Sanders-Warren faction of the party saw Buttigieg last cycle as Biden light, as too moderate for their liking, and as someone who represents the old guard's ideology, if not age. That sentiment is still alive and well in some progressive pockets. Quote, I don't think you're ever going to be able to get the Bernie movement, Warren movement behind Pete, obviously, said Corbin Trent, who co-founded Justice Democrats. On the other side of the country, Gavin Newsom is getting noticed as an outspoken leader in the nation's most liberal state, most recently by being critical of what he sees as Democrats' soft stance against Republicans. People talk about Mayor Pete being able to do some things, and I think Gavin Newsom's got a better shot because he's a blank slate nationally, said Trent. While he has already gotten Democrats speculating about his 2024 aspirations, his most recent moves have angered some who wonder whether he's helping or hurting their chances in 2022. Another California progressive, moving down to the section on Ro Khanna, Colin, another California progressive who is to the left of Newsom, Congressman Ro Khanna, has taken steps to position himself as a potential presidential aspirant. Khanna has said he will support Biden if he runs again, but some Democrats still wonder if that will happen. A lot can change between now and when he would have to announce, quote, fresh ideas and voices are critical to a healthy democracy, Khanna told The Hill on Friday. Across the country, we're hearing from young people who are mobilizing for change and demanding new leaders to address issues like the climate crisis. To this new generation, I say, be loud and keep pushing. Like Buttigieg, Khanna has traveled to New Hampshire and he's published a book, and at just 46, he's considerably younger than most other hypothetical contenders. He's also not white, a factor that distinguishes himself from Sanders, Warren, Buttigieg, and Newsom. One major Democratic donor said Khanna is, quote, being whispered about as heir apparent to Bernie while quietly making the rounds. The Silicon Valley progressive formerly co-chairs Sanders' 2020 campaign and has since focused on an economic populist pitch. Quote, Mayor Pete came out of nowhere and fired people up. I still have some hope for Khanna being able to do some things and shake some things up, said Trent. He's got the desire for sure in spades. He's also put in a lot of work in getting more TV ready and media ready. It's something he's focused on. He's, quote, strategic and cunning in a very good way. Khanna is well thought of among progressives in Washington, including the Congressional Progressive Caucus, but he's not a known entity. And unlike Newsom, he lacks broader national recognition. Oh, boy. With these choices, first of all, it tells you everything you need to know that The Hill is writing a story about the progressives candidates to, pick up the baton from Bernie, and Pete Buttigieg is even in that discussion is a joke. Pete Buttigieg is not a progressive. He doesn't believe in Medicare for all. His biggest accomplishment is gentrifying the hell out of a small deindustrialized city. He was basically manufactured by the Democratic Party. Obama people started donating to him in 2011. I did a story about this years ago. Obama's world was grooming Pete in 2011 to basically be like the next Obama in a decade. I think Obama wanted Pete more than Biden, but Pete is a sleazy little squirrel, for lack of a better word. I don't really see the black voters ever coming around to Pete. And I think Pete lacks authenticity. And he's kind of just your robot machine programmed by the Democratic National Committee. So forget Pete. Gavin Newsom also is not a true progressive, but he is charismatic. He would be able to fool a lot of people. He does have that fight characteristic against the Republicans that the MSNBC viewer would eat up and devour. He's going after DeSantis. He's running ads in Florida telling people to come to California and bashing DeSantis. Wine moms watching MSNBC love that shit. But, I mean, Gavin Newsom, yes, suddenly he's starting to pass more progressive things because he's angling for a run in 2024 if Biden doesn't run, or to set himself up for 2028. But if you ask actual progressives in California, he ran on, actually achieving the dream of single payer in California, has not lifted a finger to try and push single payer in California. Actually, the California House and Senate didn't even hold a vote this last time on the latest version of single payer. Gavin Newsom did nothing about that. He even was against, until recently, a bill to help farmers unionize, and caved on it only because Biden, surprisingly, was for it. So Gavin Newsom is a faux progressive, but He actually has delivery. He actually has that it factor. He's charismatic. He is, a decent looking fella too. So I think he could be successful in conning a lot of people. Remember how in the beginning, a lot of Bernie people who were for Bernie in 2016 were actually interested in Beto, because Beto had that kind of charismatic thing. He stood on top of bars. They kind of, without looking underneath the hood and doing any research, they were into Beto for about 5 minutes. This was Bernie supporters who supported him in 2016 were entertaining Beto. I could see that happening with progressives kind of giving Gavin Newsom a look. I'm here to tell you he's not a real progressive. He, by the way, has handed out fracking permits in California like they're candy. But he potentially, if Biden doesn't run, I think he could seriously be a serious candidate to win the nomination. And then moving on to Ro Khanna, listen, I think Ro Khanna is a nice fella. I appreciate that he's, unlike the rest of the squad, is at least willing to go on independent media shows. He's been on Status Coup a couple times. But if Ro Khanna is the choice to pick up the mantle from Bernie Sanders, I think the progressive movement is in trouble. In fact, I would rather Bernie run again at 82 than Ro Khanna. It's nothing personal, but I don't believe Ro Khanna, if we've already seen with Bernie that he's not willing to go for the jugular, Ro Khanna is not a street brawler. Ro Khanna, in my view, is not a fighter. If he is, he's been hiding it. He is somebody who believes in being inside baseball diplomacy. He is somebody that, along with Pramila Jayapal, after they held the line for several months and they refused, the Progressive Caucus, to vote for the bipartisan infrastructure deal, which was really just a privatization scheme on steroids, they folded like a cheap tent and said, we'll vote for the bipartisan infrastructure deal, even without the Build Back Better bill, the $3.5 trillion Build Back Better bill, even without that being joined at the hip. Because remember, for a couple months, the Progressive Caucus, the squad, they held fast and they did not wither under pressure to vote for the bipartisan infrastructure deal. They said, we're not doing it unless there is the Build Back Better plan. We're voting on that at the same time. Then when Terry McAuliffe lost his race for Virginia governor and the media predictably blamed it on the progressives, not this Clinton shill. Terry McAuliffe is BFF with the Clintons, and he's just a corporate shill. He basically let Dominion Energy buy, well, Dominion Energy owns the Virginia government, but he didn't do anything that progressive as governor of Virginia, and he basically ran a campaign, vote for me, because Trump, even though Trump was out of office at that time. But anyway, the media successfully pressured Pramila Jayapal and Ro Khanna by saying it's the progressives' fault that McAuliffe lost, because if the bipartisan infrastructure deal had passed by the time of McAuliffe's election, he would have won. Of course, there was absolutely no data to support that. The data actually said McAuliffe lost because Youngkin had pushed this school issue of parental choice expertly. But naturally, Pramila Jayapal and Ro Khanna folded like cheap tents, and they wrangled the Progressive Caucus to say, we will vote for the bipartisan infrastructure deal because we trust Biden. He gave us his word that he'll deliver Manchin's vote on the Build Back Better plan. Well, he didn't deliver Manchin's vote on the Build Back Better plan, and we ended up getting a stripped down joke of a bill called the Inflation Reduction Act, which they're trying to sell as historic climate investment, even though the bulk of the bill is tax incentives for renewable and tax incentives to corporations for clean energy. That would have been nice about 15 years ago, but in the face of, a climate inferno that's currently going on, in the face of, more and more powerful storms, look at what Hurricane Ian just did in Florida, in the face of drought, excessive temperatures throughout the world. 2,000 people died in Spain and Portugal over the summer due to that heat wave. London was on fire. Yeah, tax incentives are not going to do the trick. That's like, again, I always say this. It's like your house is on fire and the fire department comes with a super soaker. But why I think Ro Khanna would be a disastrous choice as kind of the new Bernie. Can be exemplified by this one exchange in the interview I did with him. When I interviewed him, I simply asked, I don't understand why you, the squad, Bernie, are not in West Virginia, are not in Arizona, shaming Joe Manchin, shaming Kyrsten Sinema for blocking the Build Back Better bill for no actual reason. Why are you not holding rallies, putting pressure on them? Let's take a look. I don't really get why the strategy wouldn't be, and granted, I'm not in DC, maybe I have an outsider's point of view. Why not say, yeah, no, this many people wanted 6 trillion. We've already gone down to 3.5 trillion. Now myself, Senator Sanders, the whole gang is going to West Virginia, is going to Arizona. Instead of trying to negotiate with corporatists, go on these people's front doors and put pressure on them. It seems to me Manchin, Sinema, they never actually have pressure on them because the media kind of slobbers over them as centrists. And the progressives, it doesn't really seem there's any rallying the base. I think that's one thing. Progressives, I don't agree with progressives who have called you all sellouts and all those things, but it doesn't really seem like you're rallying the troops because they would follow you if they see you fighting.
I had called and publicly led 23 House members to say that we ought to overrule the parliamentarian. I don't understand this parliamentarian business. No one knows who she is. I don't understand why we care about what she has to say on these issues. The vice president has the authority and the precedent to overturn that. I led a letter pushing for that. I got pushback saying, why are you taking on the administration so early on? We had a press conference with Reverend Barber and the late Richard Trumka on that. And we did actually push and fight for that to the extent we can.
See what happened with President Obama, where he created this massive organizing army as a candidate, and then he just didn't tap into it and started basically starting on the Republicans' 50-yard line in negotiations and giving them half the farm right out of the bat. Bernie has a massive army. I think there are tons of progressives who right now feel leaderless. I'm not saying you to go in there, figurative, guns a-blazing, but it just seems to me you're sending letters, making calls for. I mean, there's a lot of progressive organizations that didn't exist 5 years ago. Why aren't the tactics a little bit more aggressive and tapping into, an army of activists around the country to challenge the president on not putting the $15 minimum wage in there and several other things?
I'm open to those ideas. We did try to mobilize. We worked with Sarah Jairam, Saru Jairam and organizations in the mobilization with tipped workers, because some tipped workers are only making a little over $2.13. So we did try to mobilize on that. I'm all for ideas on how we can mobilize to get 15. Mobilization we need is to get more progressives into the House elected and into the Senate elected. I'm not sure mobilizing in Manchin's district, where Trump carried it by 30%, is actually what's going to move him on these policies.
Well, Manchin is, he's all of West Virginia, not a district. And I would remind you, Bernie won every county in West Virginia. So it seems to me by the polls, the people of West Virginia want the majority of what's in this. I'll also remind you, Joe Manchin didn't win by that much for Senate back in 2018. He narrowly won. And isn't there a bit of a risk in deflating the progressive bases for the next elections? Because I don't think this is, So basically, he said, I don't see any political benefit in going on Manchin or Sinema's doorstep and pressuring them or shaming them. Well, if you look at why Manchin ultimately agreed to this Inflation Reduction Act, which again, I don't want to minimize it completely. There are some good things in it, but overall, it's what we always get, crumbs. It is a Band-Aid to a gaping economic gunshot wound. And more importantly, a half a Band-Aid to the climate emergency we're currently living under. But when you basically say, well, I don't think it would make a difference. Well, Manchin basically said he finally agreed to give his vote for the Inflation Reduction Act because he was being blamed that Democrats were. He was basically being blamed that Democrats weren't delivering anything. Sure, he got his little side deal with Biden and Schumer for the Mountain Valley Pipeline, which fortunately, as we covered last week, failed. That side deal was defeated fortunately. But he is open to pressure. He is susceptible to being shamed. Most politicians are just insecure beauty queens. I hate to say it. Well, not really beauty queens, but you get my point. Most of them are just insecure, power hungry, desperate for attention creatures. Some of them are good and actually are doing it for the right reasons. Most of them are not. But if he wouldn't even lead the charge to publicly shame the 2 senators who were blocking the bare minimum, because I think the $3.5 trillion Build Back Better plan, that was a compromise. We really needed $6 to $7 trillion of investment. So $3.5 trillion would have been good, but it was not nearly enough. You don't publicly fight these people. Your version of being aggressive is to send letters to the president kindly asking him to do things. When Biden abandoned his promise of a $15 minimum wage because of the parliamentarian, when Biden abandoned his promise of pushing a public option, you ever hear that from Biden anymore? No. Nothing from Ro Khanna, Pramila Jayapal, or the squad. Frankly, Bernie, too. So, yeah, I need a fighter. I need an actual fighter, not just somebody who agrees with us on policies, but for somebody who's going to pick up the baton, so to speak, and be the next Bernie, which there might not be another Bernie. You know, for all the shit Bernie gets, there's a reason that there was never anyone like Bernie before Bernie. Who maybe George McGovern in the 70s? There might not be somebody like Bernie. And Bernie, for every good he did, had that one weakness, which was he would not go for the jugular. He kept calling Biden my friend. He, would basically, when given layups to attack Biden for his corruption, Hillary Clinton too in 2016, he wouldn't do it. We don't need any more of that. We need people that are going to go in and realize, you know what? I'm in a political blood fight. Not, figuratively, not literally. And I'm going for the jugular. I'm going to call out their corruption. I'm going to call out their donors. I'm going to call out, if it's running against Joe Biden, that he's a fake union man. I'm going to call out Joe Biden, who lied about his civil rights record. Bernie didn't do any of that stuff. And I know Ro Khanna would not do any of that stuff. Also, to tell you the truth, I don't have any evidence Ro Khanna is corrupt. But the truth is, his wife and his family have a lot of investments in defense contractors, the defense industry. Ro Khanna has said, "Oh, that's my wife. That's my wife. That's not me." Well, you can say whatever you want, but if you're running for president as the progressive, and your wife has all these investments, I'm sure it's more of in the defense industry, but in Raytheon and Lockheed Martin, the New York Times did a full story on, it was actually a good story for a change in the New York Times, on all the conflicts. They looked at nearly 100 congresspeople who have conflicts, meaning their investments are very close to the committees they sit on and the subjects of those committees. Ro Khanna had the most conflicts of anyone at 149 potential conflicts. Somebody just said Ro is worth $45 million. I don't, of course, throughout history, there's been wealthy figures that were progressive. FDR wasn't naturally that way. He was kind of pushed into that. So you can be wealthy and progressive. But my main thing with Ro Khanna, we need to take what Bernie did, take that same energy, take the same policies, maybe go even further left than Bernie in some areas of policy. But we cannot take that similar mannerism of, I'm going to call it a revolution, but I'm not actually going to call out my political opponents. And I'm not going to call out corruption. And I'm not going to go street brawler. To tell you the truth, the only person that I see in the progressive movement, and this isn't me calling for her to run, but the only person that I currently see in the progressive movement that there's even a chance would run a campaign the way I'm describing is Nina Turner. She did not run that campaign in Cleveland. She ran more of a muted version of the hellraiser that she was on the campaign trail for Bernie Sanders. In her 2 runs for Congress in Cleveland, she ran more of a positive campaign. She didn't call out Democratic Party corruption nationally or in Cleveland. I think that was a mistake not to call out Democratic Party corruption specifically in the Cleveland area. I don't think it would have helped her to call out Biden and the Democratic Party nationally in Cleveland, because Biden and the Democratic Party are very popular in Cleveland. But she's the only person I think from what I have heard of her would go further, would point out corruption, would call her opponents corrupt and explain why, and also has that ability to inspire people and galvanize people. I'm not selling. I mean, she did lose 2 congressional campaigns, so it wouldn't be an easy thing for her to run. Obviously, she would be painted as a 2-time loser and a Bernie, a washed up Bernie person. But I think Nina Turner is the only progressive on the scene now. And I'm not saying she definitely would, that there was a chance that there's kind of a gear to her, that extra gear on a debate stage that would say, you know what? No, this is corrupt. We need to stop normalizing plain corruption. And you want to know what? What's radical is for Joe Biden, it's more important that we make healthcare a commodity than actually give people healthcare in this country. What's radical is during a deadly pandemic, Joe Biden allowed Moderna and Pfizer, who we paid for their vaccines, our research funding led to those vaccines, that Joe Biden did not seize the patents, which he legally could. Ralph Nader talks about this, that he did not seize the patents and share the formula with the rest of the world to the vaccine. We would not have as many variants as we do spreading around if third world countries were more heavily vaccinated. So, yeah, I mean, do I think Ro Khanna really believes in Medicare for all and progressive principles? I do. I think he's a good person. I don't think he's corrupt, but I don't think he is the right fit to pick up the baton from Bernie. And currently, I don't see any squad members for that either. Definitely not AOC, who seems more interested in doing a variety of magazine covers and puff pieces than actually fighting. Smash that like button. One more topic before we move to call in. I hope you guys will call in. We could talk about Bernie and anything else. Trump, Amazon election. So, as you know, Status Coup was on the ground covering the Staten Island workers for over a year before they were victorious in Staten Island. Even though they were victorious, Amazon is still fighting against their historic union election and has not recognized them has not recognized their union status and is definitely not doing any collective bargaining. Amazon is also continuing on its union busting. And Albany is the next warehouse that is going to be holding election. Colin, if you have the tweet, breaking news, the election of Amazon workers at ALB1 in Shattuck, New York, which is Albany, will begin Wednesday, October 12th, and will end Monday, October 17th. If 51% of the eligible voters vote yes, this will be the second unionized Amazon facility in the U.S. So this is a big election. I haven't been up there to cover it, so I can't tell you my thoughts on whether they're going to win. I'm not sure. I am going to try and interview one of their leaders this week to get more of a feel. But obviously, it would be a big deal if another Amazon is successful in unionizing. But Amazon has really picked up its pace in terms of the union busting. Heather Goodall is an Amazon worker in Albany. She's basically been kind of one of the leaders of this unionization effort, and Amazon has been finding any way possible to basically harass her or find, in my view, reasons to fire her. So More Perfect Union obtained audio of a phone call with Heather, and it's not actually an Amazon HR person. It's some third-party person that Amazon hired in Oregon to call her about a complaint that was lodged against her. Again, she's basically, for lack of a better word, the Christian Smalls of the Albany Amazon. So she's the leader of the unionization effort in Albany. Take a listen to this recording.
We do that, obviously to maintain confidentiality, and we expect the same. Open, honest, and accurate with all answers. We strictly prohibit harassment and retaliation against any of the complainants or the witnesses. And the conversation will not be recorded, nor does Amazon consent to the recording of it. Can you confirm that you are not recording?
No, I cannot, but you can move forward.
Meaning you are recording?
I live in the state of New York, and New York is a one-party consent. And if you are going to, if you're going to disclose to me an allegation that was made against me, then yes, I want it documented. So what is the allegation?
Oh, okay. So, an associate reported that you had approached them at some point and said, and I quote, that Heather has a lot of good things to say. You know what that's about?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Yeah, the quote was, that Heather has a lot of good things to say.
I'm so confused right now.
Do you recall saying that at all?
Wait. Let me get this straight. Are you calling to tell me you're investigating a complaint that I said Heather has a lot of good things to say? Is that the allegation?
That is the allegation.
Heather has a lot of good things to say? That's an allegation? I'm sorry. I'm waiting for this violation or an allegation. Are you saying that there was a complaint filed because I potentially said, and I'm Heather, by the way. So
right.
Heather has a lot of good things to say. Is that the allegation?
That is the allegation.
You actually took a complaint and you're actually calling me with an allegation that simply implies that I, Heather, said out loud, Heather has a lot of good things to say. I'm sorry, is there a level of is there a level of concern here? I'm so sorry. I'm so confused.
Yeah, I don't get to pick and choose. Obviously there's more to it than that.
But I don't understand, where is the but here's what I don't understand. What policy could possibly be violated by anyone making a statement, Heather has a lot of good, because it's also true, by the way, that I do have a lot of good things to say. Many people have a lot of good things to say, as is their right as a human being. So I'm sorry, what policy are you indicating that I violated with this potential statement?
That I am not at liberty to share.
I mean, you got to give it to Amazon. Millions of dollars to stop unionization. And now they are hiring third-party union busters. This guy was calling her from Oregon to discuss a complaint filed against the union leader in Shudak. I think I'm pronouncing that right. That she said to someone, Heather's doing a good job, which doesn't even make sense. Why would she be talking about herself in the third party? So this is dystopian. That's right. This is the bizarre bullshit stuff that workers are having to deal with from Amazon. And it's going to get worse. I don't know if these workers will win in Albany. I haven't interviewed her yet. I will interview her. So I'll kind of get more of a feel for if they have a chance. But there are more Amazon warehouses now trying to unionize. North Carolina is one of them that's trying to unionize. There's an effort in Kentucky. So there's going to be a lot more union busting. And if you think what Starbucks has done in terms of union busting is anything, you haven't seen anything yet. Because Amazon is going to take it to a whole nother level if this warehouse is successful. Because if this warehouse is successful, there's going to be more warehouses that file. So we'll keep a close eye on this. Let's move over to Callin now. So let me launch the app. Colin, if you could just come on and remind people how they could download and call in, that would be great.
Just use your app. or the App Store, whether you're on Apple or Android. Just go to the App Store and search Callins, spelled Callin, and you download the app. It might ask you to make a profile, I forget. But then just search Status Coup or Jordan Sheridan. I think either one will pop up, and you'll be able to click on the show. But I also have linked in the description or in the super chat here in the pinned message. There is a link, as well as a link in the description to this specific room. Oh, oops. What's it? What was that, Jordan?
I just launched the call-in, so let me tweet it out.
And on the importance of unionization at Amazon, while you were live, a fire broke out at JFK 8. Christian Smalls had tweeted about. So unionize so you can raise safety standards.
There you go. That's a good point. So let me share this on Instagram too, so we could get it out to more people. And don't be shy. Call in. So, all right, we're live on Call-In. Call-in listeners, hopefully you can hear me. I know there's some kind of audio issues when you're listening on Call-In. So if you're listening on Call-In, you could also be listening on YouTube, so you'll hear it fine. But this is kind of an open mic situation. So if you want to talk about the death wish and the increase in politically violent talk, we could talk about that. Talk about, the midterms. Kind of, I'm open to talking about anything. I'm not an expert on all things, but opening to taking your calls on quite a lot. So feel free to call in. Chris OG is our first caller. You got to unmute your mic. You there, Chris? Your mic is still muted. All right. Hopefully he figures it out and unmutes his mic. Other people could call in too. All right, D, I'm going to go to you while Chris sorts out his mic.
Hey, Jordan, can you hear me?
I can.
Yeah, man. I saw the room opened. Yeah, these Republicans are. These Republicans are truly insane, man.
I've never seen anything like it. I mean, I've been covering politics for a while. I've been on the ground and seen, kind of not like full on violence, but definitely, violent people at events. But I've never seen like just politicians just straight up, death wish and they're coming to kill you. And I mean, it's always been kind of more coded, like the country's being invaded. And but I mean, Marjorie Taylor Greene is saying they're coming to kill you. I mean, other than Alex Jones, who said, get your guns. I mean, this shit is dangerous.
Well, this is why, I hate pissing off leftists when I say this. This is why I've never been a big fan of populism, because populism it doesn't become a class movement at all. It just becomes, we hate the elites. And that very easily descends into like this sort of nonsense. Like, it's never a structural critique of capitalism. It descends into, we hate elites. And then, and I've called in a couple of times and talked about how like I'm really pissed off that people like Russell Brand, who, et cetera, who are supposed to be on our side, have like promoted this. But this is what populism leads to, and we got to stop propping up these people.
Yes and no. I think there's versions of populism like the old school union movement that are good and are not phonies and aren't trying to basically just preach conspiracies and violence. But what we're seeing now, not just in America, but globally, is basically faux populism being weaponized. So look at Bolsonaro, who it was a lot closer than people thought in Brazil. It's basically right-wingers who actually are not real populists. They love tax cuts for the wealthy. They love give out handouts for the wealthy. I mean, pretty much all of them. They're not soaking it to the rich in any way. They're just hijacking populist rhetoric, like you said, against the establishment. And they are very successfully tapping into, economically frustrated people.
Yeah.
People that are, maybe it's not economic for them, but they're frustrated with changing demographics, changing cultural trends, more acceptance in a lot of more traditional societies. And they are really taking it up a notch every year to now. You see Trump, putting out like no election will ever be fair again or real. You see Marjorie Taylor Greene taking like two weird cases that I don't even think are true and saying Democrats are coming to kill you. I mean, Tucker Carlson's been doing this on Fox for basically 3 years, where he's.
Well, that's why to me, like, I've always seen populism in some ways too, Jordan. I guess I agree with your point about the union populism, and I think that's represented best by, obviously, who I still think is the best politician right now, Bernie Sanders. But even though he has like questions, but I just see it as a cheat code that's used to justify any reactionary behavior. Because if you think about it, and this is already done, you can make any argument populist. You can say literally, and I wouldn't be surprised if this happened. Like, if let's just say Brown v. Board got overturned, you would have actual people who we've promoted, like leftists in quotes, being like, well, these elite liberals want the Supreme Court to decide how schools want to run. And it's actually populist to let these working class people decide how their schools want to run. Like, you can make any argument populist. And that's always been my argument with it. Like, I mean, Glenn Greenwald, for God's sake, made Roe like a popular. He's like, yeah, well, the states just are going to decide about abortion now. And I'm like,
don't get me fucking started on Glenn Greenwald. I don't know what the hell happened to him. But yeah, I mean, and also it's always fake. Like Marjorie Taylor Greene literally invested in Lockheed Martin like $15,000 right before Russia invaded Ukraine. So it's like, yes, what a populist she is. Obviously, it's just a joke. I mean, most of like Marjorie Taylor Greene, for example, she's getting divorced right now. I don't particularly care about that, but her soon-to-be ex and her want everything sealed, specifically the financial information they want sealed. Well, why would you want that sealed? Probably because they have a lot of investments that go against her little anti-establishment charade. Most of these quote unquote, like Trump, do I need to explain? He's definitely not a populist. And he was never a billionaire, which I think is what he was trying to avoid being exposed for all these years. But it's getting dangerous. And I also think it's a problem when so many supposedly on the left basically just ignore this. I mean, I'm covering it not because it's Trump and it will get me clicks, but like when you have the former president who might be the next president if things go a certain way, like all caps, the death wish, and you have Marjorie Taylor Greene, who the hell knows, could rise to a higher position, talking about they're coming for you, they want to kill you. I mean, these people are basically, without saying it, go get your guns. And maybe that will be the next step. They'll be
the left is so, and I just want to say a couple more things because I know Chris is on the line, but this is where the left is so insular. They don't realize that like establishment Democratic voters, and I don't even mean because they're constantly thinking, oh, it's just elite liberals. Establishment Democratic voters are going to be more in line with the neoliberal establishment Democrats if the left doesn't have an answer. If someone turns on the TV and they see someone saying, well, this is how we work with Tucker Carlson, and they see this person saying, Tucker Carlson's a racist, here's my neoliberal policy. Guess what voters in the Democratic Party are going to do? They're going to vote for the neoliberal. Like, I don't understand how leftists don't fundamentally understand that.
If we have a candidate, for example, I'm not advocating for Gavin Newsom, but if you had somebody right now that is on the real left that would go at Republicans and frankly the Democratic Party, the way that Gavin Newsom is very directly going at Ron DeSantis, going at Greg Abbott, if we had that as a progressive going against Trump, Marjorie Taylor Greene, but not just on like, oh, he's against democracy, but like they're frauds, they're corrupt, directly talking to their people. These people are not against the establishment. They're not against the quote unquote deep state. They are the establishment. They are the deep state. Like Trump is the establishment. All he did was give, shower wealthy people, corporations with deregulation, tax cuts. The military went up under Trump. He's the one that said end the wars. You don't have anybody with that kind of framing that could do it skillfully. You don't have anyone, Trump talking about political violence. Fuck, he was in bed with the Russian mafia for many years in New York. So we don't really have anyone on the left going at them on policy, but also on just kind of the frauds that they're lying to you, that they're hoodwinking you. And that's
why. And then the one last thing I'll say, and I'll hang up, is this is why. And I know I'm going to say this as a black man. This is why, like, some of it I think was willful ignorance, but I always thought it was a mistake for us, particularly white leftists. I noticed this to give a pass to people. Like, I don't need someone who has like Robin DiAngelo's white fragility like views on race. I don't need that. But it was always a mistake for this movement to entertain a bunch of people. Because if you notice, Glenn or Jordan, everybody who's gone bad, whether it's Tulsi, etc., Glenn, Russell Brand, they were always people who always did we're anti-establishment people, and we're going to kind of stay quiet on social issues. We're not going to talk about the fact that Hillary Clinton was awful and corrupt, but it's inarguable the fact that she faced some sexism. We're just going to pretend like none of that exists, or we're going to pretend that none of the racism against Barack Obama was real. It was a big mistake to let people like that in the movement, because everybody who's become a grifter, like 99% of them, were all people who were like that.
Well, I mean, on Greenwald specifically, if you just looked at him through the years, I mean, he was never actually a leftist. I mean, he is for Citizens United. Like, let that sink in. He's not against Citizens United. When he started writing his blog in the mid-2000s, he was against what he called illegal immigration. He originally was for the Iraq War. I mean, I could go down the list. He has more tendencies with the right wing than the left wing. Yes, on surveillance and privacy and those kind of things, he's more on the left. But on economics or social issues, he was never a leftist. I just think he kind of got gifted that term because he became antagonist to the Bush administration. And obviously with the Snowden revelations, which, he'll always deserve credit for. But yeah, he was never a leftist. Tulsi.
But I guess even if I look at people like Matt Taibbi, Katie Halper, Russell Brand is a really big one. Like, that guy was supposed to be like, but they're all, even Tulsi like never really did the race sexism thing. It was always like vague critiques of Democrats.
Right. And I think that, I'll
hang up. Thank you.
There's a clear trend happening right now, and it's people who purported to be left, basically normalizing and being silent on clear growth of the white supremacy movement in this country, the violent conspiracy movement in this country, and now just the violence of this country, and they're quiet as a mouse. And instead, they are focusing on what they think is the biggest threat, which is the, suburban liberal, if you're Glenn Greenwald. Yeah, I'm not for neoliberalism, but like, I could also look at two things and look at what's more of a threat. Clearly, politicians standing up there saying, Marjorie Taylor Greene, I think we should be a Christian nationalist country, and I think Democrats are coming to kill you, to me is a little bit more of a threat than the MSNBC wine mom liberal. All right, Chris, you're up.
Am I unmuted now?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Hey, I just wanted to mention to you that the town outside of Albany is pronounced Skodak.
Skodak. Thank you.
Skodak. Okay. And and it's Albany, not Albany.
Albany.
As
I should know that.
As Tina.
My brother went
as
there.
Tina mentioned.
Yeah, my brother went to college up there.
Oh, okay. All right. So I was wondering if you might be able to fill us in a little bit about what's going on with Chris Smalls and his unionization effort. And is that effort only for the warehouse workers, not the drivers? Because one of the things I've noticed is the drivers, you know, besides having to urinate in, cups on the road or something like that. But they're pretty much ratcheting the metrics on the drivers down so much that they're doing, things that are unsafe, driving over, property, leaving packages, out in the open, not even under covered surfaces, because they're, and I think that would be, another classic place that a union would help.
Mm-hmm. I could be wrong. I could check it. My understanding is it includes drivers for JFK, not just the warehouse workers, because drivers are technically part of JFK 8. They're just not working in the warehouse. So I believe it's drivers too. And where it stands is Amazon did its own version of Stop the Steal and contested the election results, which obviously were in favor of Amazon Labor Union. And after a hearing in Arizona, the National Labor Relations Board basically tossed out Amazon's objections because they were absurd. Amazon claimed that Amazon labor union members were like threatening workers before they voted and, stupid shit like that, which is obviously lies. So the National Labor Relations Board ruled against Amazon, and Amazon has said it's going to appeal that decision. To whom, I don't know. Could be, honestly, it could go all the way up to the Supreme Court, knowing how this country works. And, knowing the Supreme Court, who knows? If it could be overturned. But as of now, the NLRB has ruled against Amazon, and they claim they're going to appeal again. But the reality is all of this, it's kind of similar to what Trump's doing, asking for a special master in the...
Delay.
Yeah, it's all delay, even recognizing the union, which they still haven't done. And then when they ultimately are forced to recognize the union, then it's just going to be one delay tactic after another to delay going to the table for collective bargaining. Because like I said, obviously people were, really, really overjoyed with the win, but that's just kind of a victory in one battle. The war is the collective bargaining. And a lot of companies have dragged that out for years. So with Amazon and its financial ability to just hire an army of attorneys, throw out a lawsuit after lawsuit, unfortunately, it could take a while. But I think the more unions, the more warehouses that announce they're going to try to unionize, win the right to hold a vote. Because again, you need to show the National Labor Relations Board at least 30% of the warehouse is interested in holding a union election for the NLRB to grant you a union election. So Albany has won the right to hold a union election. So that means at least they showed 30% of the warehouse was interested in it. If more warehouses successfully get union elections and win, I don't think Amazon can keep trying this, but eventually they're going to have to recognize if one, maybe they could fight it. If it starts 3, 4, 5 successfully unionized, I think they're going to be forced to recognize it. So we'll see.
So do you have a contact in the Albany Amazon warehouse?
Yeah, I was actually supposed to interview Heather. She's the kind of the Christian Smalls up there a couple weeks ago, but she kept having to reschedule. So I'm going to try again this week.
Okay, that'd be great to hear what's going on the ground there.
Yeah.
Thanks.
No problem. All right, Amanda, you're up.
Hello.
Hey there.
Can you hear me okay?
I can.
Oh, are you getting feedback? Maybe that's just me.
I hear you.
The reason I'm calling. I'm sorry, I'm getting really bad feedback.
Yeah, you're kind of going in and out.
All right, how's that?
Good.
Okay. So the reason I'm calling is I've called to several other call-in shows, and all of them have said you definitely need to call into Status Coup and Jordan. And so here I am, and you just proved to me that this is the place I need to be. So I want to talk about a union that's been on strike. Now they're in their 8th week here in California, the National Union of Healthcare Workers. The mental health clinicians have been on strike against Kaiser for 8 weeks now. We've been on the picket line. I just go down in solidarity because what they're asking for is to reduce their workload. They want better working conditions. This is not about money. It's about the fact that one clinician might have 2,600 patients, that people can't get appointments because Kaiser won't hire people.
Did you just say one clinician might have 2,600 patients?
Yes.
Wow.
And it might take you 4, 6, 8 weeks to get your first evaluation. And that's not just against best practices for therapists. It is against state law. The state of California passed a law that if they don't give an appointment within 10 days of the initial referral, that it used to be Kaiser cost Kaiser $2,500 every one that they didn't reschedule, that they canceled, and they were canceling thousands of appointments. And the state of California just passed a law. Gavin Newsom just passed it, signed it a couple days ago. $25,000 per not rescheduled appointment, and Kaiser won't even come back to the bargaining table.
Wow.
They're just being, and so I want to publicize there are strike funds to help. I talked to several people on the line on Friday who are going back to work now. They're more in the senior, so their pay is high, and they felt that that getting reimbursed from the strike fund was draining the fund more than was reasonable because there were so many other people that needed it. So they went back, they've gone back, but there's still people on the line because they're doing this for the patients and to get better working conditions for themselves, because you can't properly care for a patient that way.
Yeah. You should tell them to contact me because I'd love to interview them.
Okay, so is there? I will definitely pass the information along. And like I've been going down there in Oakland here Mondays and Fridays, and actually it's amazing. There's usually 30 people or so, and there's been there's a guy who comes down. He's been going to they do this every day of the week, but there's different locations every day. So Drew's been going to all the locations, all the days. He's a member of the local transportation union, the BART union here. And just talking to these therapists, it's so crazy. There's a waiting list of 140 juveniles to see the gender specialist, and they haven't had a gender specialist in pediatrics in 2 years.
Wow. That's crazy.
And Kaiser won't come to the table.
What's incredible about that is you get all this fear mongering about Canada and other countries with Medicare for all, that you have to wait for so long to see a doctor. What you're describing is people with, real mental health needs having to wait a significant amount of time.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I definitely would like to cover that.
Okay, so I'll send that along. Should I message here, or what's the best way to...
Yeah, you could just give them my email, info@statuscoup.com.
Okay, info@statuscoup.com. Okay, and for folks that are listening to the show, it's NUHW.org, the National Union of Healthcare Workers. and it's the strike against Kaiser Permanente in California, and Hawaii's on strike too. So
Great.
If people can, contribute to the strike fund or whatever. Thank you for the time.
Absolutely.
I'll sign off.
Thanks. Charles, you're up. You got to unmute your mic. Did we lose Charles? Okay. Oh, there you are. Hold on. You're up, Charles.
Can you hear me now?
I can.
Great. The reason why I called is the crux of everything that progressives talk about, the crux of the solution is worker-owned co-ops, because the problem is money in politics. Then the workers would control the large corporations, so then they could control the money in politics, and the money would come from the workers instead of the oligarchs, and then the profits would go to the workers, and then you wouldn't need unions. And basically, we can't depend on politicians to solve the problem, because we only have democracy for the oligarchs and the big corporations that contribute and have the lobbyists in D.C. that write all the legislation.
Right, which is why all these corporations write into their bylaws that they are to have a board of directors, and none of the board are actual workers other than the CEO.
I mean, think of a problem that wouldn't solve, because then all the money which controls politics would come from the people, because the people own the companies.
Correct. I mean, I do think there's some. I mean, it's not perfect. There definitely people are imperfect, so that you would, as worker co-ops, potentially have some people that are corrupt. But if it's owned by all the workers, the chance of corruption is drastically reduced. I love the idea. I think we'd have to probably go to war with capitalism to make it happen.
But it's a bottom-up approach. I mean, you basically, if all these workers get together and organize, instead of organizing they could organize to pull all their money together to start a business, and then they could eventually take over. Like they could do something, like all the workers could get together and create like a competitor to Amazon or whatever. And then they could just basically take over the system, because then they would control the means of production. Yeah,
I think it's a great idea. How do we get it?
It couldn't be corruption, because majority rules. I mean, if it's worker-owned, every worker would have an equal vote.
Right. I think it's a great idea. I think that it could a good launching spot for that is in some of these smaller businesses, like dispensaries that are opening up in states all across the country. More kind of small business, mom and pop kind of stores. But I think it would be very hard for that on a broader scale, because like hospitals, for example. I mean, it's not easy to open a hospital without kind of a corporate giant behind you. So some industries, it would be hard to open up your own shops without kind of corporate backing.
Well, what you're referring to is barrier to entry, and like some industries have a barrier to entry, like a utility company.
Yeah,
because there's only one electric easement going to your house or whatever.
Yes,
but I mean, what we're doing now is not working. So,
hey, I'm with you. I like the idea. I mean, for me, creatively, I have found sometimes when too many chefs are in the kitchen, you never get a good meal. But that's like, for me, I tend, let's look at a media company, for example, Status Coup. If we had 25, 30 people, and a lot of people had very different ideas of what it should be, it could create paralysis. But that's for certain things. I'm open to a more democratically decided approach. I don't know where you even start to make that happen.
And also, I just thought about, to address what your issue with like the hospital example and the utility example. If all the corporations were owned by co-ops, and then they would back it, and they would have the power in government to make the changes, whatever would be necessary. Any political blockers, because basically the crux of the problem is money in politics, and now we're giving the money to the people, and not the oligarchs.
I agree. I think it's a great idea. Let's start the revolution. Oh, you there?
I'm still here.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea.
Because the other way is not going to work. Because if the people at the top don't care about their regular people, they're not going to like voting now is basically useless because you're not donating to the politicians. So they're never going to represent you. And history over the last 50 years has proven that.
Yeah, I don't think what you're talking about is in substitute to unions, because remember the last time we actually had any sense of economic equality, where like the boss maybe made 5-10% more than the rest of the workers, but not like 350 times more. This was in the 1950s, 60s, parts of the 70s, and then I'm sure you've seen the chart. Everything started funneling to the top, and that came with the destruction of labor unions. So but
if the employees own the company, that wouldn't be applicable.
Yes, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't have unions, because again, it's not a perfect situation, and you could have, even within co-ops, some corrupt elements that try and consolidate power over the collective, if that makes sense.
Well, then the collective could vote them out.
True. That's true.
I mean, unions are really needed for corporations, but if it's a partnership, or even like law firms, like all the partners, they're at the top, but if the company's owned by the people, it intrinsically solves the problem.
Right. Yeah, I agree. Well, hopefully you could start the revolution, Charles.
I just kind of thought of this like the other day, because people are complaining about profits or basically wages that didn't go to the employees. But if it was a co-op, all that stuff would be not applicable.
Right. Yeah, it's a fair point. Thank you for calling in. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Last call. If anybody else wants to call in, feel free before we wrap up. I'm going to, like I said, I'm going to try and get an interview with the head of the Amazon union effort. Actually, while I'm live, there seems to have been a fire that I just saw at JFK 8, the Staten Island warehouse. So that's the warehouse that won the union election. So there's Christian Smalls tweeted out, just got word, JFK 8 Staten Island Amazon caught fire, praying everyone made it out safely. We have some disturbing updates, lack of safety drills, as you can imagine, on Amazon's end. Thankfully, the union demanded folks to be sent home immediately. So hopefully nobody was hurt. I'll get more information on that. But this is why you need unions. This is why you need unions. Just came out. Japan says North Korea launched a missile, warns people to seek shelter immediately. Oh, boy. Japanese broadcaster telling people to take shelter after government issues rare warning after North Korea missile launch. Oh, boy. What a world. All right. That's all I got. Let me read some super chats before we go. Double K, 1999. Thanks so much, Double K. Nikki O'Brien, $4.99. I voted for McGovern in a mock election in 4th grade. Looking back, I think we've been on a downward trajectory ever since. Thanks, Jordan and Colin. I think you're right. Man, how different things would be if we got McGovern and not another Nixon term. How different it would have been if we got RFK. Double K, 1999. Yeah, Colin. Why, thank you for the multiple 1999s. Remember, Status Coup is funded by you. So consider signing up as a member, statuscoup.com/join. You can become a member for as low as $5 to $10 a month. That's how we fund the on-the-ground reporting. We got some other things in the works, hopefully, to get back on the ground. There might still be a railroad strike. I'm still monitoring that. So we will stay on that. And I'll be back here live tomorrow, 5 o'clock Eastern, unless something breaks earlier. Obviously, I'll come back live if something breaks earlier. Make sure you share these live streams and go back. If you didn't see the videos that were posted earlier today, watch those videos, click on those videos. If you can, let the ads play, helps us, and leave a comment in the videos, because the more people that comment under our videos, then YouTube shares it more. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys tomorrow.